All across North America, buried under soil and silence are stories, fragments of a forgotten history whispered by ancient mounds, eroded stones, and tribal memory, stories of giants. But not just mythical giants. I'm talking about actual human remains, standing 7 to 10 feet tall, unearthed by settlers and soldiers, described in newspapers, and even mentioned by US presidents. So, why haven't you heard about them? Why does it seem like this part of history has been erased?
In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth.
And some things that should not have been forgotten were lost.
Man shall be ruled by law, not by the will of other men.
What is it? An ark. To hold the innocent. And the Creator sends his deluge to wipe out the wicked from this world.
The Lord of hosts will do battle for us. Behold his mighty hand.
In this episode, we're going to dive deep into the documented discoveries of ancient giants across the Americas, focusing on real accounts, not fringe theories. Native American legends, explorer journals, even Smithsonian records. Because when you follow the evidence that exists, something massive is buried just beneath the surface. If you're as fascinated as I am about hidden history and biblical mysteries, hit that like button and subscribe. Many Native American tribes don't just have legends about giants, they claim to have fought them. If you know anything about giants in America, you've heard of the Paiute people. They're a Native American tribe in Nevada, and they tell of the Setika, a red-haired, man-eating giants who terrorized their ancestors. The story goes that the tribes banded together, drove them into Lovelock Cave, and burned them alive. Now, it sounds like myth, and people thought so. But then, in the early 1900s, guano miners excavating Lovelock Cave unearthed over 60 skeletons, some allegedly over 8 feet tall. Even Harvard anthropologists confirmed unusual skulls and massive jawbones. In the east, the Choctaw warned of the Nahalo, white-skinned giants who preyed on people until the Choctaw wiped them out. And in the forests of the northeast, the Iroquois feared the Stonecoat giants, cannibalistic beings covered in armor like skin. These weren't just isolated stories. They were consistent, regional, and deadly serious. When the Spanish arrived in Central America, the Tlaxcalans told them of a time when giants ruled the land, and they had the bones to prove it. Conquistador Bernal Diaz de Castillo wrote that a local leader presented a femur so massive it matched the height of a full-grown man. And get this, Hernan Cortez had the bone shipped back to Spain to show the king. This wasn't just dismissed, it was documented. But then, the stories multiplied. In Peru, the Spanish heard of giants who came by sea, so tall their heads scraped the clouds. Priests excavated the coastline and uncovered enormous human teeth, giant skulls, and ribs as wide as a man's chest. Even Magellan, during his 1520 voyage around South America, described meeting men in Patagonia, quote, so tall we only reached their waists. Could all of these accounts just be exaggerations? Well, maybe. But explorers like Sir Francis Drake and Sir John Hawkins confirmed them. They had multiple journals, multiple regions, consistent testimonies. And all that evidence, it's hard to ignore. In early America, the further west settlers pushed, the more giant skeletons they uncovered. In 1755, during the construction of Fort Loudoun in Virginia, a young George Washington oversaw the unearthing of several massive skeletons, some measuring 7 feet or even more. Throughout the 1800s, newspapers across the country, from Ohio, West Virginia, and Wisconsin, published story after story of farmers and amateur archaeologists uncovering giant bones buried in these ancient mounds. One account from Ironton, Ohio, described a skeleton nearly 9 feet long, found with copper tools and massive jawbones. The New York Times even ran a headline, in 1897 about a 9-foot-tall skeleton found in Wisconsin with a skull the size of a bucket. And these weren't just rumors, they were headline-worthy printed facts, recorded and read by millions. But then, just as quickly as they were reported, the stories faded. The bones disappeared. The artifacts were lost. And the idea of the American giant was dismissed as pseudoscience. But all this talk wasn't just backwoods folklore. In 1848, a young Abraham Lincoln, standing before Niagara Falls, reflected on the vast age of America's landscapes. He said, quote,
"The eyes of that species of extinct giants, whose bones fill the mounds of America, have gazed on Niagara as ours do now."
Lincoln didn't say alleged, he said extinct giants. That was the mainstream understanding in his day. And even decades earlier, Thomas Jefferson, after excavating a burial mound on his own property, concluded that the builders were ancestors of the Native Americans. But even he marveled at reports of giant-sized Osage men and instructed explorers like Lewis and Clark to keep an eye out for unusual remains or creatures. There was a nationwide fascination, a search for truth. But then, it seems like the truth got buried under skepticism. We see that by the late 1800s, the Smithsonian took control of most American mound research. Archaeologist Cyrus Thomas published a report in 1894 claiming that the mounds were built by native tribes, not giants, not lost races. His conclusion? Well, there's no evidence of giants. End of story. In 1934, the Smithsonian curator reviewed every giant skeleton claim. His verdict? All hoaxes, misidentified mastodon bones, sensational errors. But then, some people started asking, well, what happened to all those giant bones? Why did so many vanish after being sent to the Smithsonian? If they're just animal bones, why can't we see them? Some claim a cover-up. Others say they were lost, stolen, or reburied. Either way, the physical evidence vanished, and a mystery that once filled newspapers faded into obscurity. So, were there truly giants in America? Well, we might never know for certain. The bones are gone. The stories are all dismissed. The legends, though, remain. The newspaper clippings still exist. The quotes from presidents, the records from soldiers and settlers, they all tell the same story. That long before us, giants walked these lands. And maybe, just maybe, some truths are buried not to be forgotten, but to be hidden. What do you think? Were these accounts just all exaggerations or hoaxes? Or is there actually more to the story? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. And if this episode sparked your curiosity, then hit like, subscribe, and drop a follow if you're on Spotify or Rumble. And you can also find Glory Concealed on X, Instagram, and TikTok at Glory Concealed. And now, if you want to dive deeper into the biblical origins of the giants, then click right here to watch my full episode on the Nephilim and the other ancient legends of giants that exist across the world.